to another edition of Total Max Fitness TV. Well, the sun's out and many of you want to take advantage of this gorgeous weather that we're having. So you're taking your cardiovascular exercise and you're bringing it outside, possibly taking advantage of the oldest form of exercise, which happens to be running. Well, I'm going to give you a few different tips in order to make sure that you look your all-time personal best without having to worry about any sort of injuries, especially at the knees, ankles, and or hips. It all starts with making sure that you have the proper piece of equipment. And that piece of equipment that you have to be thinking of is your shoes. The type of shoes you wear will help make sure that you avoid any sort of injury. Now, the very first thing you want to think of is what kind of cardio are you going to be doing outside, or what kind of cardio are you going to be taking advantage of? Whether it's walking, running, or hiking, you want to make sure that you have a walking shoe if you're going to be walking, a running shoe if you're going to be running, and also make sure that you have a hiking shoe if you're going to be hiking. They're three very different forms of exercise, but you want to make sure that you have the right shoe wear in order to make sure that you avoid any sort of injury. If you're a runner, you want to make sure you have running shoes. If you're a walker, it has to be something different than a running shoe because it's going to allow for a different type of cushioning. And of course, if you're a hiker, you're going to have different soles at the bottom of your feet, so in order to make sure that you don't slip or fall or twist an ankle or any of the other good stuff. Now, the next thing is, how long should you keep your footwear? That's a very good question. The thing is, as a good rule of thumb, you want to think somewhere between 300 and 400 miles before it's time to chuck those shoes and get some new ones. This could also last you somewhere between about 3 or 6 months. So if you're a person who doesn't necessarily track your mileage, just think somewhere between 3 and 6 months, it's time to change out the shoes. Now, I know it's super, hard to kind of give up your very favorite shoes, especially the ones that we've broken in. We paid a lot of money for them, but trust me, on the back end, you're going to save yourself a lot of heartache and pain, mainly the pain, especially in the knees and the hips. Now, the last thing I want you to remember is making sure that you trade out your training shoes and also your running shoes. Now, as a good rule of thumb, what I usually tell all my clients is, you want to buy 2 different pairs of shoes. Now, if you're going to be doing any sort of lifting, CrossFit classes, it doesn't really matter what you're doing, especially if you're going to be inside of a gym or whatever, that you have cross-training shoes. Now, the cross-training shoes are going to be different than your running shoes. Cross-training shoes allow for your ankle, and also your whole body, to go side to side with the proper amount of what's called lateral stability, which is just basically means side to side. So whenever you change direction or stuff like that, especially when you're taking different classes or maybe even CrossFit, you're going to need to make sure that you have cross-training shoes, not running shoes. Because running shoes are actually meant for you to go forward, not in a side-to-side motion. Now, an easy way to make sure that you don't mix up the 2 shoes is at the bottom of the sole. If you have a training shoe, you're going to place a little T, maybe with a permanent marker. If you have your running shoes, just simply place an R, so that way you make sure you know it's going to be either your training shoes or your running shoes. You also want to put the date in which you bought the shoes, so that way you can make sure that you can switch it out every 3 to 6 months and avoid any sort of injury. Okay, give these things a try. A, making sure that you have the proper amount of shoe wear for whatever kind of category that you're going to be doing. So if you're going to be running, running. If you're going to be walking, walking. Making sure you have the hiking shoes, you're going to be hiking. Making sure you trade out your shoes every 3 to 6 months, or about 300 miles, so 400 miles. And last but not least, making sure that you trade out between your training shoes and your running shoes. Okay, that's it. That was my little quick review. Make sure you give these things a try. Let me know how it goes, especially if you're a person who happens to run and you may have a little bit of knee pain. Let me know if changing out the shoe wear worked. Okay, my friends, I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.